Morning, everyone. We are Thursday and coming to the end of the week. And Steve, it's good to have you join us because actually, whether you know it or not, it was your story about Michael Jordan that prompted our topic for today, uh, which was around our heroes. And can we afford our heroes? Can we put people on pedestals, even though we know sort of logically that nobody's perfect? So what do we do? Do we have heroes? How do we manage that in terms of our mindset and thinking around people that we admire and that we would like them to be our heroes? So Trevor's, maybe I should come to Trevor because he wants to maybe frame it a bit differently. And so Trevor, you share because you actually prompted the conversation out of thinking what Steve was working along. So off you go.
Yeah, so I was just having an empty thought in the vacuum of my mind here, which actually threw me and it just made me shake my head a little bit because I'm now starting to think as I get older and older in life that for me, it's not about heroes. I actually can't point to anyone that to me is a hero. Maybe Phineas and Ferb might be someone that I put on a pedestal. But as I get older and older, I see so many ordinary people who do extraordinary things, and I also see. So I think everyone is ordinary with the potential to do extraordinary things, and I missed that discussion. But I think the flip side of that is that because we're ordinary, we have the extraordinary potential to do extraordinarily stupid things. And therefore, if you recognize that in yourself, and you recognize that in everyone else, that there are huge flaws, by putting people up on a pedestal, you are going to be seriously disappointed with everyone that you put up on a pedestal. So I think you've got to balance this thing of heroes and superheroes. I leave them to the comic books. We should, and as I say, Phineas and Ferb, animated characters and that sort of thing that teach us little moral lessons are fantastic. But maybe their flaws should also be highlighted all the time so that we don't think they are superhuman people that you live super good lives out in the world. And in fact, I think it's about actually building a ledger as you get older. And this is what I was thinking about this morning, that on the credit side of your ledger are all the extraordinarily good things that you believe you've done. And you can shout about that to everyone else. And on the other side of the ledger are all the extraordinarily stupid things that you've done. And hopefully the good side outweighs the bad side. And then my little bit of advice is don't share anything of what you have done in your past life on the bad side.
So you just look perfect to the world.
What can I say? That's what I've tried to do my entire life. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Verne, what do you think of this?
So I must tell you that this is my diary for 2021, bought long before the subject was brought up. So I think that you can actually admire people for their good deeds, and I think you have to forgive them. If you're a compassionate person, forgive them for what they do wrong, or the slips that they make. Naturally, somebody like Michael Jordan, who sort of prompted the whole conversation, where he is inherently a ostensibly a bad person and an unpleasant person, one can still, I personally can still admire his ability to play basketball and his incredible gift that he has, and ignore the bad side of him. I don't think that one has to admire a whole person or hero worship a whole person. It's more about the deeds that they do. Naturally, there's some exceptions to that. I don't think I've ever heard a bad word spoken about Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi. No, Trevor, you're aggressive. About Mother Teresa, and but I'm sure that she had her faults. She might have kept them well hidden. She might have had them in private, where she had, wicked thoughts or something. But I don't think we must write off a person because of their faults. I think we must take the best of that person. And I believe that everybody has an inherently good side. I believe that we strive to be good, but something along the way actually corrupts us into not living that full potential. And I prefer to concentrate on people's good traits, and I don't have a particular hero, but there are people that I admire that I don't particularly like them as people, but I admire them, and I think that they're honorable and they do good deeds. And that's what I prefer to concentrate on. And I think it is necessary to have people that inspire us. I really do, because it helps us to raise our game. I mean, Trevor did that for me, helped me to raise my game. And I mean, besides all his faults, I still admire him. Thank you very much.
I love that, Renee. So Trevor's trying very hard to keep his little secret bad parts unknown, and yet it's visible to all. But we love him anyway, and we're even inspired by him. So I mean, they talk about conundrums and contradictions and paradoxes. Herman, what is your thinking around the topic?
Good morning, everyone. There are two no-nos as far as I'm concerned. There's no hero worship. I don't think we should worship anyone. And we shouldn't put anyone on a pedestal either. However, sorry, I just need to stop that call. However, there are people, I think, who deserve our admiration. And I think, for example, Madiba was a typical example of a person with a lot of faults, I think. But by the same token, a man who is willing to spend 27 years in jail, not willing, but compelled to, and comes out without bitterness, I think he deserves my admiration. And there are others. And like Werner said, we do need people whom we kind of use as a, should I say, as a positive guide. I totally disagree with Trevor that we shouldn't share bad things. Sharing bad things can be very therapeutic and sometimes absolutely necessary, particularly if I have a bad habit like Herman had, being an alcoholic. The more I spoke to people about it, the more I fortified, if you like, the fact that I don't want to go back to drinking. So that is my 10 cents worth. Thank you.
Thanks, Herman. Always good insights and wisdom. So thank you for that. Steve, we kind of started with your ideas, and so hopefully you can expand on them a little bit more with us this morning.
Thanks, Lee. Sure, I've been thinking about what I would share on this. I think that one of the journeys of being human is to come to some sort of point of integration within oneself, to become more and more a whole person, as opposed to just have amplified parts of ourselves and muted parts of ourselves. And I think that's possibly why I found Michael Jordan's story so surprising, actually, because for someone with an element of themselves that's so incredibly amplified in their sporting ability, I guess because of my worldview on integration, I was expecting a great human being as well, and a kind and compassionate, and someone who had really been able to inspire his teammates towards something good rather than bully them towards something good. And so that's really what surprised me. And so I think part of the issue with looking at heroes, and when we talk about all people are flawed, is that because we're seeing it as an endpoint statement rather than as a process. And I think when you look at people process oriented, then you are more kind and compassionate and able to see that everyone is on a journey, I think, at least towards some sort of integration, where we're trying to make friends with the parts of ourselves that we're not so keen on, and trying to come to some point of wholeness, and if that makes sense. I was thinking about the words from the great prophet. You might be familiar with this prophet out of the US called Tupac Shakur, who was killed some years ago. And in one of his songs, he says, "If I upset you, don't stress. Never forget that God isn't finished with me yet." And I love that line because it speaks of a human being in process. And I love his work because it is so incredibly varied, but it is also so incredibly contrasting. And so he'll speak about some of the absolute, just the dregs of humanity, but at the same time, in the next line, he'll point out to you that these people are just trying to survive. That's why they're selling drugs, or that's why they're, in his language, turning tricks. And I think we have to be able to see people as process rather than an endpoint. And so I would say, yeah, there's parts of heroes that you can look up to, but I think if you take a hero and put them on a pedestal and expect them to be everything, then you're going to be missing something. And so I guess the parts that I take away from people that I look up to and I admire are hopefully encouraging different parts of me towards sort of health and wholeness and well-being in the long term. So sort of a long trajectory of growth. Yeah.
Steve, you don't only look like a wise man now, you sound like a wise man.
So I don't even look like a wise man.
No, you definitely are getting the vibe. We're grateful. Thank you. Really great food for thought. And Edward, you don't have nearly the fair share of hair that Steve has, but we trust you have the same amount of wisdom. So won't you share yours?
I think I've got more hair than Steve has, actually, just less beard.
Fair.
I was thinking it's quite good going last because you can pick up on what other people said. And then all of a sudden Steve spoke and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to drop the level down tremendously. Hero probably has a different meaning to a writer, because a hero to a writer is just the main character in a book. And they can be good and they can be bad. A successful good character will have flaws, and a successful bad character will have good things. In fact, there's a whole series of books on screenwriting, and actually one on writing a novel called Save the Cat, because if you've got a bad one, get them to save a cat and people will like them. So perhaps heroes are shallow. But I've got quite a few heroes. They inspire me. I don't aspire to be them. So picking up on what Verne said, it's not the whole, it's parts. And a couple of my heroes have kind of been written off the list. The first one to go was Lance Armstrong. I believe that guy was clean. So when he came out as taking drugs, destroyed the image, destroyed my love of cycling, actually. I've never followed cycling since then. And the most recent person to fall off the list was Alberto Salazar, who was a marathon runner, won Comrades, trained Mo Farrow, a UK successful athlete. And I I'm inspired by them, but I don't aspire to be them. I could never, ever be like Kelly Holmes, who won 2 gold medals in the 2004 Olympics at 800 meters and 1500 meters. But she inspires me so much. She's a wonderful person. And I've got non-sporting heroes, and there's a guy called Swampy, who in 1966 spent a week in a complex of tunnels in front of where they were trying to build an extension to the A30, because he was trying to save these meadows and these hills from being destroyed. And he then took part in more protests, and then in about 2000 he sort of disappeared a bit, because he's actually living in a commune, working for the Forestry Commission, raising a family. But he was arrested this year actually for living in a tree house to try and stop the progression of a high-speed rail route, and he was trying to save the trees. Now, Swampy inspires me. I would never, ever do what he did. It's not my thing to protest in that way. I do it in a different way, but he still inspires me. And I think I also have role models, and I think there's a difference between a role model and a hero. You know, a role model doesn't have to be fantastic, great, on a pedestal or whatever. But again, I only model myself on bits of them, and only when I want to. And I'll give you an example. There's a friend, he's very fond of beer, he's very fond of his food, he loves running, hates training. So at the end of an ultra, he struggles, and he just puts his head down, disappears into his own mind, and has what he calls his survival shuffle. And in that way, Mike always gets to the end. Mike always finishes. And when I was doing the Marathon des Sables, I hadn't modeled myself on Mike because I'd actually trained. And one day the wheels came off big time. And I just imagined myself to be Mike. I really, really imagined myself. I could see myself as Mike shuffling along in his survival shuffle. And guess what? I survived. But Mike has now, running's taken a back seat in Mike's life now, and he's playing golf. I'm certainly not going to model myself on Mike. So I think it is, yeah, have our heroes, don't put them on pedestals, pick and choose, don't expect them to be great, because we've all got flaws and we're all, yeah, so that's my thought. My last thought was quite interesting. I don't know whether you know, but the original hero was a woman. She was the priestess to Aphrodite. But that seems to be lost in the midst of time, because, you know, certainly until recently, all heroes were tended to be sort of, you know, macho men. And yeah, I love cartoons. My heroes in cartoons are Flick in A Bug's Life, Kronk in The Emperor's New Groove, and Shrek in the Shrek movies. So if I was going to model myself on anyone, it would be Shrek.
I'm with you, Edward, 100%. Shrek is definitely my hero. Closely followed by, I can't remember her name, his wife, who's also kick ass.
Fiona.
In fact, I think I've mentioned this. I talk about seeing slices of people. I'm sure I've mentioned this on previously. Is this? You just reminded me, Edward. Is this? I saw this snippet of this lady who carves totem poles with a chainsaw, and I've never seen anything more incredible in my life. Just seeing this small little lady just take this huge log and then create this incredible thing. I don't know what she's like in real life, but she's definitely my hero. Yeah, so this is interesting, is that one of the questions that I ask in my ethical leadership courses is Tiger Woods a person of character? And we go backwards and forwards and debate and so on. And there was one chap, it was in one of the programs I was running at Gibbs, and this one chap said, it's a non-question. It's irrelevant whether he's a person of character or not. His golfing ability and his talent has got nothing to do with that, with his character, and shouldn't have anything to do with us. His private life is his private life, and even his apology after his multiple affairs and so on, it was unnecessary, because who he is and what he does in public is not relevant to who we are. So it was an interesting thing, because I said, well, maybe his private life has got nothing to do with his golf, but he represents a brand, and several brands, and brands have a value code that's attached to that brand, and people aren't just buying that. We've been bought into this idea that a brand represents more than the logo, and therefore does he not have a responsibility, at least to those brands, to be the person that he is supposed to represent in the eyes of his fans? So I just put that there as a question. I don't know what's happening in the chat. I don't even know whether it's anything that is relevant to what I'm saying or not. If we don't, this is yeah. So that was the one idea that I had around hero worshipping and asking that question. The other thing is sort of looking at it on the other side of the coin, is that because I was married to a minister who was in a local church, and there were a couple of churches where there were, in the church world, were fairly large churches of 1,000 or 3,000 members. I've lived in a version of a fishbowl where you are known, everybody's watching you. And you're in an environment where there are certainly expectations of a certain way of behaving, that you have to prove that you practice what you preach. Your words are being weighed. What you wear is being commented on. The behavior of your children is up for grabs. And so this, it's all very well. We say we don't want to put people on pedestals and all of those things, but people come with expectations that it doesn't matter who you are as an individual, that there's a box that people want to put you in that say, if you are this this role, then this is what is expected of you. And I think I say that applies to ministers, but does it not also apply to leaders, CEOs, people who are in positions of authority? And that's why we keep getting disappointed. We say we're cynical about politicians, but the reality is we keep voting for them with sense of hope. And then we get disappointed. And why are we disappointed? Because we actually had an expectation that they would behave differently, that they would show up as moral people who live up to certain code of behavior. So those are that's my thinking around the topic. And I don't know is there anything that's triggered for anybody in terms of what you would like to talk about tomorrow? Trevor, you've had your turn, so I'm going to go to Edward. Yes, go for it.
I had my turn lots when you weren't here, Lee. So I'm quite happy to defer to Trevor.
Oh no, please don't do that. He's just had his turn.
Okay, I really
I'm the
like
judge. And
I really
give it
like
to
your
you.
thing about being in this box and wanting to be, you know, and people judging you and having to actually act the part of what they see you as. So something around this, you know, what do we have to do to keep in with our persona, I suppose? Does that make something that you can make sense out of? What obligations are there on us? What restrictions are on us because of what people think about us?
Thanks, Edward. And Trevor, were you going to say something similar or different?
I want to dispute everything that Ed has said and Herman has said, and I want to raise the controversial issue of not amplifying your bad points, because other people, and I think that's where Ed is going, other people, they sort of want to put you in their box as they believe you should be behaving. And I'd love to take this little discussion further as to whether you should amplify your bad points, your flaws, all the things you've done wrong, or you should be focusing on those things that are good about you, and recognize that your flaws should be left behind somewhere in a little box that Vernet's got in safekeeping in Clarence, somewhere hidden under the Golden Gate, somewhere along the line. So I think they dovetail with what Ed's doing, but I want to have an argument with Herman. Yeah.
I do think they dovetail. I think it's a great conversation because it also, one of the things that I was thinking about is what changed in Tiger Woods' life was this public apology, certainly in the eyes of many people, whether it was heartfelt or not, or whether it was a publicity stunt, but there was this moment of acknowledging some wrongdoing. So where does that come into the equation as well? So this is going to be a great discussion tomorrow. How true are we to ourselves in terms of what we share, what we don't share, and how is that impacted by other people's expectations of us? And yeah, it's going to be a good discussion. This is something I've had to wrestle with my whole life, let me tell you.
So wear underpants that don't have holes in them, because you could be exposed tomorrow.
You know, that's the best advice I've ever heard. Thank you so much, Trevor. So let's leave it on that auspicious comment. And also just to give you a heads up, as Verne and I have been having some private chats, and a while ago we sort of dropped into Verne's mind that it would be time to tell her story. And so on Tuesday, I'm just giving a big announcement here. Verne is going to share with us his story. So we look forward to that. Okay, so see you all tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.